In the ancient world, some roles came with honor, power, and the promise of glory. But the most dangerous job in all of human history belonged to the miner. The true casualties of the ancient world, they weren't always the soldiers on the blood-soaked battlefield. They weren't the celebrated gladiators fighting for the roar of the arena. It was the ancient miner, a ghost in the shadows, a forgotten soul, buried alive beneath the crushing weight of progress. These were the men who descended into the jagged mouth of the earth, leaving the sun and the living world behind. They were hunting for the veins of civilization: gold, silver, copper, tin, and iron. This raw, cold earth was destined for the blinding heat of the forge, to be hammered into the weapons, the tools, and the towering temples of kings. But all of it, every shimmering coin and every sharpened blade, had to come from somewhere. And that somewhere was a dark, suffocating, and constantly collapsing hole in the ground. The Laurian silver mines of ancient Greece, at their peak, employed over 20,000 workers in the deep. And the vast, overwhelming majority of them were slaves, human fuel for a mechanical beast made of stone. Without their stolen labor, the greatest ancient societies could never have expanded. They could never trade or wage war on a global scale. In the ancient world, metal was absolute power. It was the cold, hard blood that fueled the heart of the empire. And the miners were the condemned, forced to risk everything, just to rip that power out of the rock. But the job itself, it was a nightmare. A slow, agonizing descent into a literal underworld. Imagine crawling on your stomach into a narrow, jagged tunnel, with nothing but a flickering torch to guide you. There was no fresh air. There was no room to even turn your head. Just the heavy, silent grip of the mountain. There was no way to know if the ceiling above you was about to give way and end it all. They fought the earth with the most primitive tools: heavy iron hammers, stone chisels, wooden picks, and baskets that cut into the skin. They hacked at the rock by hand for agonizing hours in a darkness so thick you could feel it. Sometimes they stayed down there for days, trapped in a claustrophobic hell, until their strength simply vanished. And the deeper they plunged, the more terrifying it became. The darkness, it swallowed the torchlight whole. Deep in the belly of the world, the air grew thin. Every breath was a desperate, burning gasp for life. The heat, the geothermal heat, grew stronger with every step, turning the tunnels into a blistering underground oven. And the dust, thick, blinding clouds of shattered rock, filling their lungs with every single breath. The tunnels themselves were highly unstable, frail wooden supports groaning under the crushing weight of the mountain. One wrong strike could send a fatal fracture racing across the stone wall. One weak support could trigger a sudden collapse, burying an entire crew alive in the absolute dark. And if the falling rocks didn't crush them, unseen, toxic fumes would silently poison the air. There was crippling dehydration, men rationing precious drops of foul water with trembling hands. There was starvation. Emaciated bodies pushed far past the limits of human endurance. There were horrific injuries, shattered bones and torn flesh that would never properly heal in the dark. In many ancient empires, this brutal, merciless labor was forced upon prisoners of war, captives, and the enslaved. Under the unblinking gaze of ruthless overseers, The ones doing the hardest work had the absolute least protection. To prevent any hope of escape, some men were chained, bound in iron to the very stone they were ordered to break. Some were brutally beaten. Any hesitation was met with swift, merciless violence in the shadows. And some were worked till their hearts simply gave out, as the labor continued right over their lifeless bodies. A miner could die slowly, miles underground, in complete and deafening silence. There was no modern ventilation, no safety rails, and absolutely no rescue teams coming to save them. Just vulnerable human bodies, crude iron tools, and a desperate, fading instinct for survival. So why did free men ever choose to descend into the dark? Because for the poorest among them, sacrificing their own bodies was the only way their families above ground could eat. For the rulers in their palaces, it was simply a way to feed an empire's endless, insatiable hunger for wealth. The raw metal pulled from the abyss became absolutely everything a society needed to dominate the world. Without mining, the great empires of history would have withered, their power fading into dust. The human toll was devastating. A man sent into the mines aged decades in mere years, his life snuffed out like a weak flame. So, when we look back at the glory of the ancient world, remember the shadows. Behind every majestic temple, every conquering army, and every great king, there were the miners. If you want to uncover the true stories of history, subscribe to Bite Roots. Every week, we go deeper into the hidden origins of the world around us. The truth is always more interesting than the textbook.
Without the steady flow of ore from the mines, the empire's wealth began to fade. Trade routes dried up, and the legions suffered.